hard for me to decide what I was more impressed by this weekend. Iowa State's offense looking sharp and more confident than ever, or the defense completely erasing Kansas's identity. I cannot wait to talk about the Cyclones dominating the Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Marovitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are breaking down Iowa State's dominant, and I repeat, dominant win over Kansas, 38-14. In the first segment, we're going to kind of take a quick look, offense versus defense. Both played so well for Iowa State, but I kind of want to make a pick. Which one do I think made a bigger impact in this showdown? Then in the second segment, we're going to take a look. Although Iowa State is 7-4, they are playing with some of the best vibes around. Senior day, it was unforgettable, honestly. A huge win, but a lot deeper than that. They played with a different energy, and we'll talk about that in the second segment. Then finally, to round out today's show, I'm going to give some game day grades because it's always fun to give A's, and I think there's going to be a lot of A's going around. Not all of the grades will be A's. Don't worry, it's not going to be that boring. I do have a few things that I didn't love, but for the most part, this team played so well. Let's not get negative. Let's hand out some top tier grades, honestly. Before we get that far, though, first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'm not joking, man. This one was so fun to watch. Iowa State dominated Kansas, really whistle to whistle every single down. Obviously, Kansas did score 14 points, but it didn't really feel like Iowa State ever was in a position to lose this game. And this will come up in the third segment when I talk about coaching decisions and whatnot. I think that they felt the same way, honestly. I can't ignore the 14 points or the 8 plays that led to those 14 points. But aside, honestly, from that, this one was a fun watch. It never felt like Iowa State was in trouble. So offensively, Rocco Becht start the day 10 for 10. Ends up going 18 of 23, 241 through the air and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Honestly, this one was more thrilling. I think this is what made the game so fun to watch. Across the board, Iowa State had 50 carries for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 38. That means for the day, offensively, Iowa State had 462 yards of offense and 5 touchdowns. That is what we've been waiting for so long. That's exciting. That's what this offense is capable of doing. And we have seen glimpses of this, not really to this extent. 38 points. I mean, that's exciting. They scored 55 against South Dakota, 39 against Arizona. Yeah, that's it. That's really their kind of big scoring games. I guess I was about to count 30 against Cincinnati, but that game did not feel the same way. 38 against Kansas. This is what I felt like Iowa State's offense was capable of doing. And I felt that all season long. Brett Eskilson really, in my opinion, showed what kind of wide receiver he is in this game. Rocco Becht really took what the defense gave him for a lot of this game. And I do have a note specifically. I have just a laundry list of notes from watching this game. But I have a note in here specifically that Kansas was just kind of constantly chilling at like 8 to 10 yards off of Brett because they know he could take the top off the defense. And time again, Rocco and Brett were like, all right, yeah, we'll take a free 6-yarder. Yeah, we'll take a free 4 yards. Just boom, 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 force him upfield, turn around, balls on him. Like that. And Rocco was very accurate today. Had a few balls that got batted down at the line of scrimmage. Had a few balls that honestly I didn't think were maybe the best decisions, but overall they were in a relatively accurate spot. And Rocco played very well today. But like I said, I think the biggest takeaway offensively for this team was the run game. Carsen Hansen goes for his 4th straight game at 100 yards or more, has 22 carries for 120 yards with a touchdown, long of 25. Really gashed Kansas early. And then Kansas kind of figured out how they could slow him down. And then he missed a few drives due to an injury, but he came back and he got over that 100. I think he had 99 yards when he was taken out for an injury because he had just had a play that went negative. And he was at like 102 or whatever it was. And I was on the edge of my seat like, I really hope they find a way to get him over 100 because he put in that work early. And that's the point I was going to make was obviously Iowa State jumping out to that 17-point lead proved to be crucial in the game flow of this game. But that was the story of this was Carsen Hansen getting out, getting effective, or not effective, but effectively bruising Kansas early and making it very tough for them to get back into this game. I was happy to see him go over 100. Abu Sama, can't forget about him, though. Still had 19 carries for 57 yards. And then Aiden Flora, the exclamation mark for Iowa State, 2 carries, 51 yards, long of 38 in there. But both of his carries were just purely electric. Pivoting towards the defense so we don't run out of time here. The thing that I really noticed with Iowa State's defense, particularly in the first half, because obviously Iowa State held Kansas to 0 points. First time Kansas has been was shut out in the first half all season long. I think they had like 92 yards in the first half. I have it written down, but there's so much written down. Yes, 92 yards in the first half. Iowa State's offense, it really felt to me, there was at some point in the second quarter where I noticed something or something happened and I felt this way. It really felt like they were playing on a tilted field. Okay. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to show you what I mean. If you're listening, I'll try to describe it. Basically, the field was tilted instead of being flat, like end zone to end zone. It was tilted like this. And Iowa State was on the high end, on the taller side. So they were just running downhill. And Kansas was trying to fight their way up into the end zone the entire first half. It felt like no matter what Kansas did, right? Even if they pick up, a 12-yard gain, a first down, if they break their way out of it was supposed to be a pass play, but Daniels or whoever, because Kansas had a ton of guys in behind center, honestly. If they end up like extending the play and running out of bounds, Iowa State's defense was going to make them pay for that decision. Honestly, to run an offensive play was kind of how it felt. It might be Jalen Daniels kind of stretches out, reverses, gets to the out of bounds. But Caleb Bacon not only takes on the lead blocker, no, not just that, takes him on and then rocks Jalen Daniels. Now, I believe that particular play happened in the second half, but it was one of those plays where it just felt like Iowa State was playing with some sort of advantage. And honestly, that, in my opinion, was the key to Iowa State winning this game. I understand that Iowa State scored 38 points, but the way the defense played, taking Kansas almost entirely out of the game in the first half, was the key to Iowa State winning this. They were able to build up so much momentum that everything on offense just came easily. Now, obviously, that's not just due to momentum, but there was an element of it felt like they couldn't do any wrong. And then when you saw Kansas out on the field, it felt like they were fighting so hard just to get anything to go. They were putting balls in windows and reverse. They were running reverses on kickoff return, man. They were doing everything they could to get it to go. And Iowa State's defense was there every step of the way. Now, like I said, still did allow 14 points. Jalen Daniels went for 154 and Cole Ballard went for 37. We'll talk about that in the second segment here just a little bit. So 191 through the air, 132 on the ground. Those are good numbers. Those are great numbers. I am amazed at how well Iowa State's defense is playing right now, considering what they're sending out there. There were a lot of question marks around John Haycock, and the fan base was just very fed up. At the middle to the end of that 4-game losing streak. After a game like this, I don't know how you don't sign him to a 30-year contract. I mean, that's ridiculous. Now, Kansas, not the most successful team this season. I understand that. But boy, they're good. They're good. Shut them down immediately. There was nothing going for Kansas, particularly in the first half. And that's what won Iowa State this game, in my opinion. The offense was so much fun. And we will really talk about that in the second segment. But man, that defense opened the door for the offense to run wild, in my opinion. But both played so well. We'll get to that in the grades portion of today's show. But first, we need to talk about Iowa State playing differently with a different energy. We're going to do that coming up right here after this. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need some more seating for your guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. Me personally, I am a huge fan of just browsing through their site, and it's so easy. Honestly, that's my favorite part, to find pieces that actually fit my style, nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. If you've ever hosted a family for the holidays, it's my first apartment, kind of away from home. So we might be hosting, how much difference a few new touches can make. Wayfair makes that so easy. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. I can't wait yes, Iowa State dominated Kansas, but I can't wait to talk about how Iowa State played in this game. And I mean more from an energy standpoint here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the number one sports podcast network. Man, I'm getting jazzed up just thinking about this because Iowa State season has been so interesting, right? And we all know this. 5 straight wins, 4 straight losses, now 2 straight wins. Very streaky, very high highs, very low lows for this team this season, with the number of injuries, but also the accomplishments. And every season kind of goes that way to an extent. But man, to see this team play this way against Kansas after what they went through for 4 straight losses was special. It was like empowering to watch them play with the energy that they did. Now, we talked a lot in that first segment about the defense flying around. And I will say, I think that there was something in the water, if you will, a little Marcus Neal action, with this bye week and what the defense was about. Because the one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you guys saw this too, I didn't really see the secondary doing their little flutter thing where they put their hands up like this after pass breakups. Granted, I mean, it was just kind of an interesting day all around. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, if they locked in a little bit differently. I didn't notice that. That's been one of my favorite things about the secondary all season long, is how together they've been, and that celebration. It just seems like the defense, that unit really works together, and that kind of showcases that. We didn't really see that, but honestly, this team was flying downhill like they were playing with like a certain a purpose that it was hard to, like, you could feel it, and I think that seeped over to the offense as well. There was just an element of like, Iowa State played like they were a top 10 team. Now, I'm not saying that the product on the field was a top 10 performance. Okay. I don't know. That's literally neither here nor there. I'm not making that argument. I am saying the energy that Iowa State played with was that they were significantly better than Kansas, and they were going to show it. They were going to make it known that they were the better team, that they are faster, better, stronger. They care. And also, what a beautiful day. I mean, it was 55, sunny after a week of gloominess. Like, everything about this game in Iowa State was just the best vibes. Now, I want to throw this in here because this is what football's all about, man. To me, I'm not saying this one moment, but this idea. Brett Eskelson, touchdown. I think this one was on the 4th down to the side that had the band. Sprint out. We'll get to that later. Touchdown. Yes. Gritty to the sideline. And it was an ugly gritty. It was a Mike Gesicki gritty. I understand that. But just the amount of fun that Iowa State was having, he scored and just took off running. And they did it in slow-mo to cut to commercial. Everything about it was perfect. And then you also had Kansas was hitting the dab. Everything about the way that Iowa State was celebrating, it was just a fun environment, honestly. I bring up the Kansas thing because them getting in on it was kind of funny to me. But there was just so much, obviously being senior day, I think it was Tyler Moore that was getting a ton of praise on the sideline at one point. Like, Iowa State just played so fun. And I think that that's really, I would not expect that from a lot of teams after what they went through for 4 losses. I bring up all of these fun points, and it's so much fun to think that way, to have this fun, but then you have to realize that Iowa State isn't 11-0 dominating some 4-win team. Iowa State at the time of this game was 6-4 after 5 straight wins. They were 6-4, and they were playing a 5-5 Kansas team. This team that started 5-0, now completely out of the Big 12 race, completely out of, not even close to the top 25, which I think they probably should have been, but nonetheless, not in the conversation for a lot of different things that we thought they would be. And they had fun. They got the win over TCU, which I thought honestly was a season changer. And you come off the bye and they play like that. That is a testament to what Matt Campbell is doing. Because it would, like I said, it would have been so easy for this team to just shut down. All right, we were 5-0. Yeah, we got our 6th win. Like, it is what it is. We're just kind of moving on. That's not what Iowa State did at all. Like, now they have a real chance to go 9-4 in a season where they suffered 4 straight losses. And we will talk about this week. I will talk about this. Iowa State, probably could have been undefeated this season. Now, they didn't. They weren't. It's a reason. Everything happens for a reason. But, man, the way that they played against Kansas with that energy, if they played with that energy all season long, there's no way that they don't beat at least 3 of the teams they lost to. Minimum. That makes them 10-1 at this point in the season. They were so capable of doing that. And the fact that they were capable of doing that and they still came out and after all the losses came out and played this way, it's a huge testament to what Matt Campbell is doing there. All of the assistant coaches, the staff as a whole, obviously all the players on this team. This is what a great program is made of. It's not, all right, this season's not going to be here. Mail it in. See you next year, guys. Obviously we'll get in the weight room and have a better season next year. That's not what Iowa State's about. That's not what Matt Campbell's about. They came out and they rolled Kansas. They did. It wasn't close, and they had fun doing it. They celebrated like they were having fun, like they were having success. That's that feed off of itself kind of, growth, positive. What do they call that? Gosh, I reference it all the time. Positive feedback loop, basically. Exponential growth. That was special. And I'm happy to see that for what Matt Campbell's program is about. It would have been I wouldn't have been so shocked if they finished 5 wins. We had that conversation. If they didn't beat TCU, do they beat Kansas? Then how does the rest, do they beat Oklahoma State? Where do they end up? They could very easily be 5-6 right now, like Kansas is, I love that for Matt Campbell. I love that for all these seniors on senior day. I love that for all of the position group guys that get so much flack on this show, particularly. I'm sure they get flack, from other programs and other, podcasts and whatever, Cyclones oriented or not, whether they're opposing or national. The coordinators were getting grilled for those 4 weeks, myself included, was grilling them. I love that for them, the way that they got that win, and they were they earned it, man. That was a huge win for Iowa State in a lot of different ways. That makes me really happy. That was a super fun one. So Iowa State winning 38-14. It just feels good. It just feels good. It was a perfect day out, and everyone played really, really well. But how did they actually grade out? I'm not PFF here, but I have at least some idea of where I would grade these guys, and we're going to go over that position by position coming up right here after this. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app made it super simple, and it has my favorite feature by a mile. I could see my exact view from my seat before I bought it. I don't do so good with the maps, man. I got to see the actual view. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Iowa State played so well against Kansas. I feel like that proud teacher about to hand out these grades here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is not, boy, was I a part of a lot of classes at Iowa State that had professors, on syllabus week that were like, a lot of you are going to fail this class. Or on the day after the exam when they were graded, you'd come in and say, well, the average was like a 17. Like, bro, why? First off, why is the exam that hard? But second off, it's not how I feel. I feel much more like the professor that came in and was like, I can't believe how well you guys scored, because that's truly how I feel. I cannot believe that Iowa State played as well as they did, and it was a I am very happy at the way that everything played out, but I could not believe it. So we're going to grade the major position groups, not every single player. Obviously, we don't have time for that. But we are going to grade the major position groups for Iowa State in this game, starting with Rocco Becht. Rocco, I'm going to give him an A-. Okay. And I have a few reasons for that. The first of which, I'm going to go over the reasons it's not an A+. The first of which was the interception extremely early in this game. I think it was the second possession. I have it written down. I think it was the second possession. And yes, it was the second drive. It went right into the hands of Kansas. And it ended up being basically overturned by a flag. I think it was a defensive holding. I don't think it was DPI, a holding flag on the intended receiver. So it wasn't a bailout call from the other side of the field. But I personally felt like that throw, and it came at a time where he was probably like 5 of 5 or so, 6 of 6. I think it was right around there. So pretty early on. I thought the holding came at an interesting time. It wasn't like it didn't, to me. What I'm saying here is Rocco did not throw into a penalty. Sometimes Rocco will throw the ball towards a penalty or deep shot, where there's a likelihood that they'll get a penalty. And I let that go. Honestly, I commend it. Like, that is a game within the game. And I'm not saying he didn't do that, but it doesn't feel that way. So there was like throws like that, and there was a throw, the first incompletion Rocco had. It was his 11th throw of the day, obviously not including penalty throws. It was batted down at the line, but I honestly thought, I think it was Chase Sowell on the top side that was wide open. It was like a 2nd and 10. So Sowell ran the route a little long. I thought he probably could have cut it off at about 8 or 7 yards and came back quicker. But either way, Rocco was looking left the entire time. Brett Eskelson ran a comeback, a hitch route, and it was batted at the line. But I honestly thought Kansas was going to be in a really good position to defend that ball as well. But we are really, really, really nitpicking here when I'm going into specific plays and breaking them down like that. An A- for 18 to 23, 241, and 3 touchdowns is honestly probably too low. I think after what you consider what he's been through the last few weeks, you could easily give him an A+. I'm just going to be slightly tougher on him, but he did absolutely nothing other than that pick that was called the other direction to take Iowa State out of this game. He was totally okay with handing the ball off 50 times to allow Iowa State to win this game. He had 13 throws, I think, at the half. 10 of 10 through 3 incompletions. It was halftime, and he ended up with 23. So he basically threw it 10 times in each half. Wild. You won't find very many quarterbacks who are okay with taking on that kind of a role. Interestingly enough, Jalen Daniels also threw 23 times. He just threw 13 completions. Cole Ballard ended up coming in late in that game. But I think Rocco Becht easily deserves an A. I'm going to go A- personally. At least it's in the A category. Running backs, essentially. Carsen Hansen, A+ probably, I would say. Abu Sama, I'm going to give him an A+, an A probably. No, I'll give him an A+ as well. In particular for the hit stick he had. that I heard from my couch. Ridiculous. That came after Kansas' second touchdown. It was on a 3rd and 1, I believe. He just went and met, I think it was number 26 in the hole, ran him over. That's not something we see out of Abusama ever. Huge deal. Huge deal. That stops Kansas from getting the ball back to get some momentum. That run cannot be like praised enough. So yeah, I'm going to give Abusama the A+ there. And then Aiden Flora only had 2 carries, but the reason I bring him up is I cannot wait to see more of him from the backfield. Ridiculous returner. Ridiculous speed. I mean, the kid's insane. And not to draw a super like parallel, but I know the guy personally. Reminds me of Caden Weegan at Iowa. We haven't seen a lot of Caden in the offensive game, and that's been one of my biggest things with Iowa football is like, what are you guys doing? This guy is insane, so fast, and I don't know why they haven't schemed him in. Kind of feel the same way with Flora. Like next year, and maybe in the bowl game this season, I can't wait to see how Aiden Flora is used on the offensive side of the ball. 2 carries, 51 yards, the touchdown to seal it. Phenomenal performance from Aiden Flora. A+ from him as well. Receivers, I'm going to give him an A at least. I might even go into an A+. I thought that they played with ridiculous poise. They took what Kansas gave them. Kansas was just giving them small stuff all day long, and then they were able. Honestly, I thought they had a really good feel for the zone. They communicated well with Rocco. Brett Eskelson, your leading receiver, with 6 receptions on 73 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 20. Like across the board, Iowa State played very, very well in the receiving game. I mean, if you're obviously grading all of them at once, I'd give them an A+. Tight ends, I would also give probably an A+, maybe an A. Honestly, I have no notes. Like that's just like phenomenal work from the offense all around. And that's what was so special about this game. There were a few moments, obviously, but I think just especially when you consider what they've been through. Defensively, the first half, everybody gets A+. Okay. That was incredible. That was simply like, wow, no sacks on the day, but that's kind of, been Iowa State's MO all season. I only say that literally just to say it. I am not even making a point about that. I'm simply bringing it to your attention. But Iowa State played extremely well. Actually, no TFLs either, which is almost more interesting than the sacks, because I don't think Iowa State was ever going for a sack in this game. The way I had kind of talked about it last week was like, I'm totally good with, let's just let Jalen Daniels kind of see what he's got. Like, let him make the decision. We don't need to get to him. We don't need to force his hand. Like, just, he's probably going to escape, honestly. So just like, let him do his thing. We'll kind of keep tabs on him, but in the secondary, we'll play phenomenally and force him into weird positions, and the linebackers will flow if he decides to run. Like, that's exactly what Iowa State did. No sacks, no TFLs, but ridiculous. Held Kansas to what? Around 200 yards of offense all together, 14 points. It was, I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes. Iowa State's defense just played phenomenally. So the defense as a whole gets an A+ for the first half. Second half is where Kansas started to really break things open. And I think that really comes down to the secondary based on the way that it kind of went. Linebackers, obviously, and the defensive line and more of the run game. But for the most part, it was kind of through the air. Look, I'm totally cool with giving everybody about an A for the second half or an A-. You still held Kansas to 14 points in the second half, and it was really all the third quarter. And obviously the interception on the goal line was huge. I wouldn't say Kansas was going to win the game if they scored there, or they were going to spark some crazy comeback. But they were in a position to at least make some noise, and Iowa State shut that down. So turnover at the exact right time. Now, quickly, coordinators, John Haycock, A, at least, probably an A+. The only reason would be those essentially 8 plays. Like, what's going on there? We can dive deeper into that. But, for the feel-good vibes of today's show and the all-encompassing of what they did in that game, I'd give him an A+. Taylor Mauser, I'm going to give him an A, okay? We'll get into this more tomorrow. We're out of time for today. But for one, just the sprint outs thing. We talked about this. 2, there was a 4th down I didn't love, or a 3rd down. I have to find it in my notes. And there were a couple of decisions, just not on just various plays that I wasn't a huge fan of, but across the board, 38 points. Honestly, I would argue maybe the best offensive showing since South Dakota. It was a fun fun game. The way everyone was utilized. Not no notes. I have some notes, so I'm not giving him the A+, but a phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. Across the board, Iowa State, I'm going to give them an A. There was only like maybe 3 things or 4 things all game long that I would say, and an A+ is like 100 out of 100. It's almost impossible to score an A+, I would say. Now, this is like the first time I've done this grading scale, so keep that in mind. I don't have a history of grading hard, but I phenomenal game. So much fun to watch. Let me know what you guys thought. I mean, it was a feel-good Saturday. It really was. Great weather, great play. Never a doubt either, which was so much fun. We will get into a few question marks I had tomorrow, so come back for that. But man, shout out Iowa State, 7-4 on the season after 4 straight losses, finds a way to beat TCU and now destroying Kansas, looking at potentially a 9-win season if they beat Oklahoma State and win their bowl game. The turnaround has been miraculous, to say the least. Thank you guys for listening to this point in the episode. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. If you haven't already, it's completely free, and it helps the show grow, so I appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.